So after 22 years in the industry and talking to clients about good mental health in recruitment, I often talk about the needs of the people versus the needs of the business. And this appears to be more and more of a dilemma, especially in SMEs. I like to talk about brain chemistry, or in a different context, getting more from your strawberries. How can we life hack this? How can we look at people management and engagement in a slightly different way? The reason I do this, the reason I want to talk about it, is because for those that aren't aware, even off the back of Mental Health Awareness Week, the stats speak for themselves. A lot of people know that 1 in 4 of us will have a common mental health disorder every year, but we're now being able to see that it's 1 in 3 in the workplace will have an issue. I tie this back to our ability to be resilient and bounce back. People talk about the stress vulnerability model. What is that individual level to be able to cope with? My analogy is slightly different. I work with clients and I talk about the Titanic. The Titanic structural engineering had these the watertight bulkheads, and she was able to stay afloat with 4 of them flooded. And I like to tell people, we are the Titanic. We're all managing different aspects because of the way in which our brain works and how many of our compartments can be flooded before we start to sink. The problem with stress and the problem with the brain is that our brain's wiring is still tied into the way it was when ancestral man came about. So the Neanderthals. So how do we really tell the difference between a survival threat, whether it's a dinosaur from however many millions of years ago or a scary recruitment sales director? We can't. We work in the same way. So when we are stressed, we produce cortisol. You've all felt it. It's that in your stomach. It's that feeling that something isn't quite right, and it's that threat to survival. And the problem with cortisol is that when it overproduces, you get more calcium in the brain. It gives us brain fog. It creates confusion. Do we want to be managing people by hitting them with a stick? Yes, that's a stick, not a poo. You know, it's not good for our cortisol levels. We don't want our people to be stressed. It is in our best interest as business owners, as leaders, as managers, as individuals to be happy. How do we do that? How can we influence it? I like to say, you know what, let's talk about a dose of happiness. And what I mean by that is the happy chemicals, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. We're all aware of this stuff, we all know it, but we don't often put it into a work context. So when we talk about dopamine in recruitment, I think there's a real correlation. Dopamine, for those of you that don't know, that is the chemical that motivates us, that drives us towards reward. We anticipate. Why is it so important in recruitment? Well, you know what? What do? We set sales targets. We set incentives. We do lunch clubs. But do we tap into individuals, or do we do a blanket approach as managers and as leaders in our frameworks? When we talk about oxytocin is, for any of us that are parents, you know, when you have a baby, that bonding, that feeling, it's trust, it's very important. It's that, yes, we're all close. In recruitment leadership, it's absolutely essential. What it is in the workplace, it's the bonds we've got, it's the trust that we have with our employees, it's the trust we have in our leaders. Do we communicate? Are we transparent? If you are, you're going to have a better sense of oxytocin in the business place. This is how you can influence that sort of chemical in the workplace. The next one, serotonin, it's a little bit more complicated for any neuroscientists in the room, so I'm going to make it very simple. It's the feel-good chemical. It's the good mood. We feel great. It's pride, it's ego. Again, there's a correlation to recruitment. We have top billers. We incentivize. We basically make people feel good about what they do. We put them on a pedestal when they do well. Do we recognize people properly? Do we understand some people need more recognition than others? Endorphins, slightly different. Most of us know that we get endorphins when we exercise. It's an analgesic. It's there to relieve pain. So you know what? If as part of your benefits package, you do give people gym, you are encouraging endorphins. But you know what? Help them. Make sure they go. Do those things together. You can tap into all of those happy chemicals as a manager. Yeah, it's just about looking at it in a very, very different way. A lot to cram into 5 minutes. More than happy to talk to anybody else about it. But for me, it boils down to this is vital to leadership. This is vital to people development. And as Richard Branson says, take care of the people take care of business. So thank you very much.